Marcus Hill appeared to have it all. A handsome, well-spoken man in his early 40s with a thriving real estate business in suburban Virginia. His wife, Catherine, was equally enviable. Beautiful, poised, and fiercely protective of her family, Catherine had a daughter from a previous marriage, Lily, who had recently turned 19. To outsiders, they were the picture of domestic bliss. But inside the Hill residence, darkness was quietly settling in. The Hills lived in a stately colonial-style home at the end of Maple Lane, where the houses had sprawling lawns and the neighborhood kids rode their bikes until dusk. Marcus was known for his charm and generosity. Neighbors often spoke of his impromptu barbecues and warm laugh. But behind that polished exterior, Marcus harbored desires that were far from ordinary. It began subtly, a lingering glance at Lily during a poolside afternoon, a brush of the hand when passing by in the narrow kitchen, comments about how grown up she looked now. At first, Lily dismissed it as awkward stepfatherly attempts at bonding. Catherine remained blissfully unaware, wrapped up in charity committees and garden parties. But Marcus was persistent. Late one evening, after Catherine had left for an overnight fundraiser, Marcus and Lily found themselves alone in the dimly lit house. Rain pattered against the windows, and a tense quiet hung in the air. Marcus poured 2 glasses of wine under the guise of celebrating Lily's college acceptance. She hesitated, but took a sip. The lines blurred. Conversation drifted too far into personal territory, and soon an illicit relationship began to take shape, one fueled by secrecy and manipulation. Neither spoke of it in daylight. It was a shadow that existed only after dusk. Marcus, intoxicated by the thrill, felt invincible. What he didn't know was that Catherine, though outwardly oblivious, had begun to notice. She saw the way Lily's eyes darted away when Marcus entered the room. She noticed how Marcus, once eager for their Friday date nights, now feigned exhaustion or late meetings. A seed of suspicion took root. And then, one evening, Catherine found something. A crumpled hotel receipt buried at the bottom of Marcus's coat pocket. The date matched a night Catherine was away on business. The room was booked for 2. Her stomach twisted, but she needed proof, real proof, before she confronted him. She decided to wait and watch. Catherine Hill wasn't a woman prone to paranoia. She'd built a life on grace and restraint, the kind of person who held her tongue when the PTA gossiped or when Marcus's jokes verged on crude after a second glass of scotch. But that hotel receipt gnawed at her. 2 nights after finding it, she sat at the kitchen table alone, staring at the scrap of paper. The room number scrawled in Marcus's hurried handwriting felt like a confession. Catherine considered every possibility. Was it another woman? An affair? Or something worse? The answer came sooner than she expected. Lily had grown distant. She avoided Catherine's eyes during breakfast, skipped family dinners, and locked herself away in her bedroom. Catherine chalked it up to teenage moodiness at first, but then she noticed the subtle changes. The late-night showers, the whispered phone calls, the uncharacteristic tension around Marcus. Catherine devised a plan. She would leave for a charity event in Richmond for the weekend, but quietly return a day early. She told Marcus she'd be gone, kissed him goodbye, and drove away. Hours later, she doubled back, parking down the block to avoid detection. That night, from the cover of rain-soaked hedges, Catherine watched as Marcus let Lily into his office. The one room of the house Catherine had long since abandoned, filled with his old records and whiskey bottles. The curtains, usually drawn tight, remained cracked open. Catherine's pulse quickened as she saw Marcus lean too close, his hand brushing Lily's shoulder in a gesture no stepfather should make. Lily looked hesitant, her posture stiff. Catherine saw it clearly now, fear masquerading as consent. The image seared itself into her memory. But she needed undeniable proof. She crept to the back of the house, pulling out her phone and recording as much as she could through the rain-streaked glass. The exchange was brief but damning. Marcus's hand lingering on Lily's thigh, his lips whispering against her ear. Catherine's stomach turned. A bolt of lightning cracked overhead, briefly illuminating Marcus's face, twisted in a smug, predatory grin. Catherine's trembling fingers nearly dropped the phone. And then something unexpected happened. Lily glanced toward the window as if sensing a presence. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met through the glass, mother and daughter, both trapped in the same nightmare. Catherine stepped back into the shadows, heart pounding in her ears. She had seen enough. By morning, she would decide what to do. But one thing was certain. Marcus would not get away with it. Staring at the ceiling fan's slow, lazy turn, replaying the scene in Marcus's office over and over. The look in Lily's eyes haunted her, a silent, desperate plea Catherine hadn't seen before, or perhaps had willfully ignored. By dawn, Catherine had made her decision. She wouldn't go to the police, not yet. No scandal, no questions from neighbors, no whispered conversations at charity galas. Marcus was cunning, and Catherine knew how easy it would be for him to twist the truth, to paint Lily as a rebellious teenager and Catherine as a hysterical wife. No, this would have to be handled quietly, permanently. That morning, Catherine greeted Marcus with her usual grace, kissed him on the cheek, and even made his favorite breakfast. Scrambled eggs, coffee black, and buttered rye toast. Marcus, none the wiser, chatted about a new property listing and a golf weekend with a colleague. But Catherine's eyes no longer saw him as a man. He was something else now, a snake coiled in the heart of her home. She waited for Marcus to leave for work before approaching Lily's room. The girl was pale, dark circles beneath her eyes, a shell of the vibrant young woman she'd once been. Catherine sat beside her, gently taking her hand. "Sweetheart," Catherine whispered, her voice trembling. "I know." Lily's face crumpled. A floodgate of silent tears broke, and she buried her face in her mother's shoulder. No words were spoken for several minutes. The burden that Lily had carried alone for months was lifted in an instant. "I didn't know how to tell you," Lily sobbed. Catherine stroked her hair, a mother's protective instinct fully awakened. "You don't have to," Catherine said softly. "I've seen enough." That afternoon, Catherine called an old college friend, Evelyn Mercer, a retired private investigator with a penchant for discretion and a history of dealing with unfaithful husbands and messy divorces. Evelyn didn't ask questions. She arrived that evening with a small black duffel bag, a heavy heart, and a simple nod. "I'm sorry, Kath," Evelyn murmured, pouring them each a glass of scotch. Catherine explained her plan. A staged accident. No police, no scandal. Marcus would disappear. Evelyn hesitated. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Catherine's eyes were cold now. "He took something from me, from Lily. I want him to pay." The plan was set in motion. Tomorrow night, Marcus would be lured to the old summer cabin by the lake under the guise of a romantic getaway. One Catherine pretended to suggest to rekindle their marriage. Marcus, self-satisfied and unsuspecting, eagerly agreed. He had no idea what awaited him in those woods. The lake cabin sat deep in the woods, a relic from Catherine's first marriage, long since abandoned dust-covered furniture, and ivy creeping through cracked window panes. It was perfect, remote, forgotten, and far from the eyes of neighbors or the ears of police scanners. The plan unfolded smoothly. Catherine told Marcus she wanted to rekindle their romance, to start fresh after weeks of coldness. She suggested a night at the old family cabin, and Marcus, smug and believing his sins had gone unnoticed, jumped at the offer. "You're finally coming around," he'd grinned, pulling her close. Catherine forced a smile. "We'll make it special." Evelyn was already waiting in the shadows when they arrived. Hidden behind the tree line with a black duffel, she gave Catherine a subtle nod before disappearing into the darkness. Inside, the cabin smelled of mildew and forgotten years. Catherine had lit candles, their flickering glow casting long, sinister shadows along the wooden walls. She poured Marcus a drink, laced with a mild sedative Evelyn had supplied. Nothing lethal, just enough to slow his reflexes. They sat in silence for a while, the crackle of the fire filling the space between them. Marcus, lulled by the warmth and drink, grew careless. "I should have married you years ago," he slurred, his hand resting possessively on her thigh. Catherine's stomach turned, and then came the final straw. Marcus, drunk and reckless, confessed. About Lily, about the nights Catherine had been away, about how easy it had been. "She wanted it, you know," Marcus sneered, eyes half-lidded. "I did you a favor. Taught her what men like." Something inside Catherine snapped. She rose quietly, retrieving the heavy fireplace poker from beside the hearth. Marcus barely registered her movement, his mind dulled by drink and arrogance. "Funny," Catherine said, her voice eerily calm. "I was just thinking how much you've always loved this place." Marcus looked up, frowning. "What are you—" The poker came down hard, once, twice, a sickening crack of bone and flesh. Marcus's eyes went wide, blood blooming from his temple, then everything inside them went dark. By the time Evelyn stepped inside, it was over. Catherine stood over the body, blood spattered across her blouse, the poker still clutched in trembling fingers. Evelyn approached, wordless. Together they wrapped Marcus in a tarp, dragging him to the shallow grave they dug hours earlier behind the cabin. The night was silent, save for the chirping of crickets and the scrape of dirt against flesh. When the job was done, Catherine lit the cabin ablaze. By morning, the only thing left would be ash, and Marcus Hill would officially be missing. Catherine returned to the house, her face serene for the first time in months. Lily was waiting on the porch, fear etched into her face. "It's done," Catherine whispered, and for the first time in too long, mother and daughter were free.